There's a sense of unity when we're stuck in isolation. There's a sense of unity when we'll never pay our bills. There's a sense of unity when we're living in the moment. There's a sense of unity when we've swallowed all our pills. Lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know, so lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know. Well, we sense impunity from these mega corporations. We sense impunity as our friends die on their jobs. We sense impunity as our voices met with tear gas. And we sense impunity when their action profits still lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know, so lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make a place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know. Well, there's a school committee, and they want us to reopen. There's a school committee relying on invented facts. There's a school committee who have put our lives in danger, and there's a school committee who have worked us past our max. So lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make a place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know. What if I told you your emotions are the ocean? What if I asked you to let the tides roll in? Would you choose to see the soft light or the stingers on the jellies? Or believe me if I told you that you never have to choose? Lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make a place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know, so lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make a place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know. Well, what is community? It is all of us together. What is community? It is how we will resist. There's a sense of unity when we're living in this moment. As without community, we will never make it through. So lift me up from this existential hole. Let me make a place of refuge in my soul. How can I share what is left in my bowl? I don't know.
Welcome to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, your new favorite podcast. And today we have Flight or Visibility. How are you?
I'm good.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for blessing us with it. And wow, so many things were said in it. So, I mean, just with that song that you just performed for us, kind of gives us an idea of, you know, who you are and what you're about and the message you're trying to push. But at the bare essentials, who is Flight or Visibility?
Who is Flight or Visibility? That's a great question. I am a classical punk musician, and who dabbles in poetry, um, and my music speaks to my desire to keep pushing for change and keep holding both myself and others accountable for imagining a better world.
And in imagining that better world, have you seen change? Like, are we? Do you feel as if we're moving in the right direction, or do you feel like as we're moving in the wrong direction?
I would say both. I would say the harder people push to move in the right direction, the harder the people in power push back. Um, but I do feel like, um, I do feel like there is strong movement happening right now, and I do feel like we are living in a moment where people are really waking up to the reality that um, capitalism um, is not sustainable anymore, and all of the systems of oppression that come with it are also not sustainable, and people are seeing those intersections in a way that they haven't seen them before. Actually, I'm going to say perceive them, not seen them, because I want to watch my ableism.
Right. I definitely get that. Definitely get that. And you spoke on you like to dabble in poetry, and even in the music video Sleep, at the end of it is very poetic, like the where it's just a shabba da da, but it's the words on screen. That's very poetic. And then you go with a song like My Name is Joanna at the beginning of it, it has that poetic speech. When did you start to actually dabble in poetry?
So, complicated question, because my parents met at a poetry reading, and so, like, part of that has been in my body since before I knew it was there, but I really started to get serious about poetry this year, in the pandemic. I was just finding, like, I tend to write whatever is coming from the heart and the moment, and so sometimes that's a song or a melody, and
Right.
this year that's been just a lot more poems, and so I feel like I'm really just getting started in that, and I definitely feel like more of an imposter in poetry spaces than in music ones.
Mm. Yeah, I think we've all felt that before, but once you get your feet wet, then knock on the door, they'll let you in. So, um, and speaking of poetry, I feel like everything that you do, you really think about it in how can I put this in a way that everyone's gonna understand it. So, flight or visibility, where does that name actually come from?
Oh, that's a great question. So that um back in 2016, when Trump was quote unquote elected,
Hmm.
um, I started, I was thinking about like all the people who had voted for him and probably not realized that they knew a marginalized person who would be affected by his policies. And so I started this project called the Visibility Project, where I was actually making pins for people that said insert identity and visible. So like my pin said queer, Jewish, invisible. Other people had like disabled, queer, invisible, black, invisible, and then like any kinds of intersections. Like people were, I think my personal favorite intersection that I made a pin for was disabled, pansexual, non-binary, Jew, and visible. Um,
Nice.
and um, and so I the idea was basically just to remind people that like someone who is going to be affected by these blatant blatant hate crimes on the rise, blatant white supremacy in action, and just like have people like wear them in their workplace, in their day to day, on the train, etc. And I actually ended up losing my customer service job that I had at the time, which was on campus and um, representing the school I was at, and they were not okay with me having a message that said queer, Jewish, invisible on my body while working that job. So
Wow.
the word flight came about because there's this classic cliche superhero question: what superpower would you rather have, flight or invisibility? And so I wanted to flip that on its head and say, no, visibility is a superpower, whether chosen or not. And so I think we can always choose when and how to use our identities, and how to talk about them or choose not to talk about them, and that's also a superpower. And I think, yeah, I realized like it's a little bit of a white frame of mind. Like my identities, my marginalizations are ones that I can really choose to display or not in any given moment, and that's a huge privilege. And
Yeah, and a power too, because even speaking back to My Name Is Joanna, the video. If you guys haven't seen it, go see it. It's a wonderful fucking video and an amazing song at that.
thank
But
you.
definitely, how just at the beginning, it's like the too long don't read version. It's like, hey, if you don't listen to the whole song, I'ma put what's in the whole song at the beginning, and you speak about how you have power to speak your mind, but you also have power in holding it in and not saying anything, and that is a powerful thing, and with that song, you go into speaking about people not knowing you at the office, or acting like they relate to you, or acting like they understand when they really have no fucking clue. So, with what you just spoke about on, losing your customer service job, was that inspired by the song at all?
Um, so that actually was more inspired by my song Sleep, or that inspired my song Sleep more. I
Got you.
was, and also the companion poem that I wrote more recently, An Ode to My Anger, um, which is available somewhere in the depths of my Instagram. But I was definitely feeling very alone when I wrote Sleep, um, and feeling like I'd just lost this job, and like people were saying they supported me but weren't coming to my defense in a way that I needed, and I wasn't sure what I needed in the moment, and so I just felt very alone. And Joanna, on the other hand, that actually came about. Um, I was um, ordering food after a job interview where I thought I had dressed very gender fluidly and very fabulously, and the person taking my order was saying, like, what can I do for you, sir? How can I help you, man? And like every like 3 seconds throwing in a gendered word, misgendering me, and then said, can I get a name for the order? And I just had this 1 second time frame to realize that I could completely change his perception of me with just one word. And so the first name that came to mind was Joanna. So I gave him the name Joanna, and um, that was like my little secret. And it's like this, Joanna is really about celebrating that secret. Like the refrain. My name is Joanna. My name is Joanna. Like, it's super jokey, but it's also serious and it's straight from the heart. And it's like this moment of like, I'm celebrating myself and I just discovered this new aspect of myself that I can choose to give to people or not at any given time. And that's my secret. That is my core. That is my heart. So
Yeah, definitely powerful. You know, it even reminds me like I have a couple of friends that, you know, if they're at a bar and the guy comes up and talks to them and you know, they always give the incorrect name. And it's like, that's their little secret too, because you don't know who this guy is. You don't know what his intentions are. And, yeah, having that little secret is a beautiful and powerful thing.
absolutely, yeah. I like to tell people that the song is not just about gender fluidity or trans identity, because there's so many situations in life, like the one you were just mentioning in the bar, where people don't like want to give their real name or want to give a different name. What the
Right.
idea of a real name is such a construct anyway. Um,
It is. Yeah. I just posted on my Snapchat a couple days ago that if I were to have a kid, I'm not naming that kid until after they're born because I need to know their personality.
yes,
You know?
yes.
I mean,
Definitely.
old cultures used to do that all the time, and some of them still do. I had some friends from West Africa, and I actually went to a baby naming ceremony because they don't name it until 2 weeks after it's born.
That's awesome.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I never knew that. I feel like that's how it should be because you name your baby and your baby comes out. It's like my baby does not act like its name, you know.
Yeah.
Most definitely. So, go.
One thing I want to know is how did you decide upon classical punk? Were you classically trained first and found punk, or did you grow up in like the punk tradition and then find classical instruments second?
So I was definitely classically trained first, and more than I mean, genre is such a hard thing for musicians. Like when you're booking, everyone wants to know your genre. That's the first thing that they want to know about you. And for me, like, if I was really gonna put words to it, I settled on classical punk because it takes two things and boils them down to one pretty understandable thing. But for me, the punk part of that doesn't come necessarily from punk music. It comes more from a sense of subversion. And so, like, my music is so much more than those words. It's storytelling, it's cinematic, it's mission driven. But those words aren't as catchy. And so classical punk just feels like the correct genre to boil my music down to.
I feel like your music is more like performance art than it is like seeing a traditional kind of music performance.
Thank you. I definitely feel strongly that all music should be performance art and all artists should have something to say.
Definitely, most definitely.
It definitely makes it a lot more interesting when they do. As Nate says oftentimes, I like ignorant music. That's not saying anything, it just feels good. But music that has something to say is very interesting.
And
might
I mean, why
Oh, go on.
choose? Like, it should still feel good.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Not saying that music that's talking good shit should feel bad. It still needs the vibe. But yeah, I think sometimes we choose vibe over content. I actually recently saw a very interesting analysis of Hey Ya by Outkast. And his lyrics are going extremely deep, but over a very catchy, happy beat. And he even calls us out on it. He's like, "Y'all don't want to hear me. Y'all just want to dance."
Yep.
But like, he's going very deep in like analysis of relationships and breakup and things like that. But I never knew that until I saw the analysis. I was like, "Whoa, he got me on that one." That just
right.
Yeah, I honestly didn't really start paying attention to lyrics until I started writing them. And I think a lot of people will hear the beat, the groove, the textures, the way things are interacting with each other before they hear the lyrics. And so, like, now that I write lyrics, my job, I feel like, is to really pull people into those lyrics. So I practice a lot. I practice my diction a lot because I want to make sure that I'm understood. But like, it's still such a challenge because like, I also want to like weave all these textures and things and other stuff um, into there.
Right. Yeah, and I think you do a good job at it, because just listening to your music and something else actually, I just thought about it. Something else I want to speak on is with the My Name is Joanna video. In the description, you have like the actual transcripts of the video, the lyrics, like everything to a T. That's something I haven't seen often. What made you want to do that and publish it on the internet?
Wow, you all did your homework. Thank you. So the transcript, I mean, I have a lot of friends who will call me out if I post like any kind of picture on Facebook without an image description because it's inaccessible for people who use screen readers, people with vision disabilities, and having the transcript of just everything that's going on in this video, like it just felt like this video is for everyone. I want everyone to be able to access it. Um, so it felt like the right thing to do. I'm really glad you guys found it. I'm really glad it wasn't too hard to find. And like it definitely it also like accessibility helps everyone. Like I understand more depth to that video because I wrote about everything that's happening in it. Even though like I didn't do any of the animating in there. My friend and colleague Guadalupe Campos did all of that.
Shout out to
But
Guadalupe
like
Campos.
yeah, the Guads on Instagram. Look them up. They are phenomenal.
Awesome.
But just like writing about like the sparkly boots in there, like I had more understanding of the ways they manifest because you see animated versions of those boots and you see me actually wearing them physically, and there's even a scene where like it's alternating steps between the animated boots and the physical boots. And so like things like that, like I just have so much deeper of an understanding of it because I wrote about it.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And what I know you didn't do any of the animating, but how much input did you have in the animating, and how much was it only Guadalupe Campos?
So Lupe definitely consulted with me on concept, and I there were certain things that I really, really wanted to happen, like the dance break in the middle, when the instrumental solos are happening. Um, I absolutely wanted there to be dancing, and that was actually really, really hard for them to animate. They had not animated anything more than 2 seconds before this project, and neither of us really knew how involved the project was until we were well on our way. And so
That's a good way to find out.
yeah.
That's usually how it
So
happens
like
too.
Yeah.
seriously bless them, like they did so much work to make this video happen. And They also, the other thing that I had input in was I actually chose the cast. I reached out to friends that were close with me, but who I hadn't gotten to see in the pandemic, and everyone submitted like photos or a short video of themselves, and then Lupe actually drew each person and made them really look like my friends.
Wow.
And so it was, and then I think, and then their friend Riley actually did the backgrounds, which I didn't know what that was going to be. I think maybe they asked me for some color preferences, and I was like, I trust you. um, but the backgrounds also were really, really beautiful, and just like very bright colors. These collages of like the same color, but like laid on top of each other. Different textured paper. Really, really interesting. And then there was one that I don't know if this was intentional, but we did some in-person scenes in front of a mural in Alston that like has like a bunch of like round splotches of color. Um, and Riley actually made a pom-pom version of that mural, which was, it looked like the mural to me, but it was all different colors, and there was gold tinsel and like a very different aesthetic, but still at the same time the same aesthetic because you have these different round splotches of color.
Right.
And so I thought that was a really, really cool way of tying in the virtual with the reality.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the video. Sounds like I enjoyed just almost very close to how much you enjoyed making it and enjoyed how it came out, because like with the words that you're saying and the message that you're getting across, and how the it keeps going to like the live video of you just dancing and being free and high spirited. It's like, yes, like that's what we need in this world. We need those free spirits, especially the ones that are oppressed, because it's hard for oppressed people to be free. It's like, bruh, I feel like I'm stuck in a cage. Like, so for you to break free of those chains, even if it's just for a second in a day, that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And
Most
do you feel like
definitely.
you're tapping into like a part of your inner child when you create in this manner?
Oh, maybe. I think that, um, yeah, you know what? I do think that I am tapping into part of my inner child. My inner child wanted to be a tap dancer, but I have no coordination. And like I did take a tap class for gym credit in high school that I just completely could not do. And so like I do feel like in some ways, so Joanna in the video is my aspirational self, and I feel like that relates to the inner child because the inner child is like purer, more full of fantasy, more ready to receive the world, um, ideally. And then shit happens and we grow up and we're less ready for that kind of energy. So Joanna is still somewhat my inner child, and I had that represented in the track with the drums, which were both imitating tap dance sounds and also taking a giant like club dancey solo at the very end of the track.
Yeah, I love when you can see someone's inner child coming out. Like just watching David Blaine, every time he does a magic trick, like he gets so excited about it. And it's like he's been doing this for how many years, but his inner child is like, "Yay, feed me, feed me. This is what I want."
And that's gotta be like I just wonder as a performer how exhausting that must be to keep that up? Like, is he really like that?
Right.
Or like off camera?
Right. Yeah, and that's a question in itself, I guess. And speaking of performances, is Flatter Visibility performing shows and doing live shows?
So I am currently booking outdoor gigs. And I'm not quite ready to go inside for performances yet, but I am ready to book outdoor gigs, and I'm bringing 3 new projects into reality. One is a queer klezmer band.
I want to talk
That's
about
playing Eastern European Jewish traditional dance music, wedding music. Another project is I really, really, really want to start a singing string quartet, where everyone is like me singing and playing a string instrument. And so we could have up to 4-part vocal harmony and up to 4 string parts at once, although chances are the texture would be less dense most of the time. And then the last project I'm trying to bring about is Flighter Visibility Band, because I started emerging as a solo artist in the pandemic, and so I've released a couple recordings, but I haven't really played my music live with a large ensemble, and so I want to make that happen as well. Currently, I'm waiting for bookings, but I'm excited to get back into it.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about is Klezmer. I saw that project and I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. So I did a little research and then I looked up some Klezmer bands. And the way it made me feel was it took me back in time, like I was walking through like a Arabic or like Middle Eastern like marketplace, and people were just buying their produce, selling different things. Everybody's happy and excited because it's like a Saturday afternoon at like 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very interesting music. I like it.
It's very feel good music, but it also has like a lot of kvetches. The Yiddish language is full of like, yeah, and like that's reflected in the way that we play klezmer music. And it comes from a time that like was generally considered like a very, very hard life, like remote Eastern European Jewish village culture pre-Holocaust, and then after the Holocaust, there was massive Zionist movement, and like the Yiddish language was actually banned in Israel. And klezmer music, I'm not sure if it was banned, but it was definitely like there was this idea that you are not supposed to play this. And then there was a big revival movement, and it's been coming back. And like I do feel like part of the reason that I love to play klezmer, I mean, I played it as a tiny child. My mom had a klezmer band, and like I was playing it before I was really playing like anything else. But it definitely feels like for me, it's a big reminder that Judaism is a diaspora, and that
What does that mean?
What's a diaspora?
It means that we are like Jewish people are from many places, and they have their own cultures and their own heritage, and we own no real claim to the state of Israel.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's that's kind of cool that you play it, because it's also a reminder that, hey, this was not okay for my people to play for a long time. and now you get to play it freely, so that's just a
Mm-hmm.
reminder in itself.
And
Definitely.
I'm trying to still figure out Diaspora. One thing I often say is that as a people, like black people aren't monolithic in America. We're
Mm-hmm.
in different communities and different cultures, so homogenizing it to the black community is a misnomer with good intention, but still not accurate. So a diaspora, would that be like saying Jewish people are not a monolith? We're different from different places of the world that we come from?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's I've heard diaspora used both in Jewish contexts, and I've definitely heard black people talk about diaspora as well.
Well, thanks for using that vocabulary. I like that. I
Yeah,
like
no
learning new
problem.
things. I like learning new things.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a word I had never heard before, but now I know. Learn something new every day. And with flatter visibility, you spoke about wanting to make an actual band. Do you have any current members, or are you still on the search?
So it's complicated because the people who I have played with most recently don't live near me anymore. Um, but I definitely have people in mind that I want to ask. And then it's also depending on how much money a employer is going to offer. That depends on how big a band I can bring. So, like, I'm not going to say that, like, so and so is always in the band because A, maybe they're not available on that date, and B, maybe the gig didn't provide enough money for me to bring everyone, and then I have to pick and choose who do I want for this vibe, and it might not be the same people every time.
I like that. I like that. That's very fluid, like water. Like you can. Actually, I was about to say it, but would you? Let me ask it. Would you ever play solo as flatter visibility? Like,
Oh yeah, I do all the time.
nice. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you had a couple of artists that you performed with, or these upcoming shows and shows that you've been playing outside is solo. So right now you're doing it solo, but looking to expand.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
And that kind of goes into the context that you put on Instagram where you say community art is greater than my art. Where did that inspiration come from?
I think it definitely came a lot from organizing shows. And like I do a lot of stuff to bring communities together. I was running a festival called Weird Folk Fest, where we would highlight people who are like kind of like this podcast are doing something a little bit out of the ordinary, or maybe are people who don't get a lot of platforms because of various marginalizations. So we have an effort to with that, and then I'm run an online art school right now, the School of Arts and Social Justice at Makeshift Boston, and that's like I want to employ the people around me whenever I can, and so I love to find ways of getting people opportunities to perform, getting people opportunities to teach classes, getting people opportunities to bring something that they are interested in talking about, performing about, and like have everyone present for co-learning and creating together. And I just love collaborations.
And with those collaborations and putting shows together, when did that become a thing when you started putting events together?
Probably about 4 years ago. Weird Folk Fest was actually started was started by a band that I played in, and then the person who'd been organizing the fests moved to another city and said, "Hey, do you want to take this over?" And I did, and it kind of just grew from there.
Nice, nice. And if music is to become a full-time job, what would that mean to you? Like, because I saw you post on Instagram speaking about, the singing quartet and the Klezmer band. Speaking of this, I want to play weddings. I want to do this. This is what, this would be for. So would you want to travel the world performing?
I mean, yeah, I love touring. I would not want to tour full time because it is exhausting. But it's been a couple years now, and I am itching to get on tour. I think that music is such a weird, fluid thing that, like, full-time musician basically means whatever is needed in the moment. So sometimes that's teaching. Sometimes you get lucky enough to book a tour. Sometimes you are playing on other people's projects. Sometimes, it's just like there's so much that it could be. And for me, the important thing is that I was actually prescribed a very specific model that I have rejected. And that is, I actually majored in classical oboe in undergrad. And that model was very much like you get a job in an orchestra and then you stay in that orchestra and you don't do much else. And while I love playing in orchestra, I hate competitive audition culture, and I find it pretty exhausting to always be around people who are waiting for someone else to give them an idea about musical shape and things. Like, conductors kind of have absolute power in that setting. And so I did not want to do that full time, and I realized that midway through my undergrad and took a lot of steps to make sure that that wasn't going to be my only path.
I understand that definitely. So basically, you took your prescription, flushed most of it down the toilet, and you're like, if I ever want to come back to it, I still have half of my prescription. But yeah,
yeah, and I mean, I still use a lot of things from that time, like my sense of long lyrical phrases, my ideas about dynamic contrasts, my oboe playing just in general. Like, so much of that comes from that time of my life, and so I can't divorce it completely. And I've decided to start embracing it, but it's definitely been a journey, and I needed some time completely away. If you'd asked me 3 years ago what my genre was, there's no chance in hell I would have said classical punk, for instance.
Right. Gotcha.
And one thing I've seen you do on Instagram that's really cool is play multiple instruments at one time, or even go as experimental as like trying to loop your voice and play something on top of it with the violin. So you sing, play violin, keys, piano, oboe, and kazoo. What else do you play?
I don't really play keys. I can fake it enough to play my own music occasionally on keys with oboe. And yeah, I mean, if someone gives me an English horn, I can play it, because I had to as part of my oboe schooling. But oboe and violin are the mains, plus singing, and then kazoo. I mean, I guess I recorded on it. Again, like, I wouldn't I necessarily play it. I was actually in a duo called Petting Kazoo, and my duo partner um, is a professional singer and voice teacher who would actually use kazoos in their lessons, and they did most of the kazoo work in that duo and sounded phenomenal on it. So, um, but I think while I am like sometimes playing violin and oboe at the same time or like oboe and piano at the same time, I'm always thinking about sound first. And like it's really important to me that like whatever party trick I'm doing isn't taking over and isn't being done just because I can, but because it's necessary. And so I think that stuff just comes from me wanting to be as self-sufficient as I can. And like I have a loop pedal, but I haven't actually set it up yet. And so I'm been working on trying to do as much as I can without looping, and hopefully soon I'll actually set it up, but like use it judiciously.
It's like you said, using it not because you can, but because it's necessary. And it kind of sounds like that's how you would use a loop is. I'm not going to use this because I can use it. I'm going to use it because it needs to be used right here. I like that.
That's the ideal. I mean, I'm sure that I will practice a lot with it and be gimmicky because I'll be obsessed with it when I first get going with it. Um,
Of course.
but ultimately, that's the goal.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw looping. It blew me away because we were at this church and this small band was playing, and there was a rhythm guitarist. The lead guitar player also played, or also did vocals, and he was playing this texture and is kind of ethereal, had a lot of reverb and maybe some flange on it.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I know, he stops playing that and switches to a completely different sound and like reharmonizes things. And I'm like, where's that coming from? There's only two people, but I hear three. Like, what in the world? It blew me away.
Yeah. When it's done well, it is just amazing.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I guess the last question I really have is something you posted on Instagram, and I guess it's just more so in my ignorance, but it was speaking of playing at Gay Pride, and it said a lot of things, but the last thing it said, and I kind of want you to expand on, is it speaking about resisting state violence.
Yeah. So I mean, the first Pride was a riot, and in recent years, Pride has become very cozy with corporations, very cozy with police, and that poem, I actually just wrote it after sharing the stage with a performer who ended their set at like, oh, it wasn't like Pride TM, but it was like a Pride event, and they ended their set with the Israeli national anthem, and I felt like there is no place for nationalism at Pride. Pride is about resistance. Pride is about community. Pride is about self-reclamation. It's not about any kind of um, any kind of support for an oppressive state power. It's not about and there was a boycott of Boston Pride this year. We all went to the Trans Resistance March instead, because Boston Pride has actually refused to put Black Lives Matter in their messaging, and they also have not been listening to queer, trans, POC. They've not been listening to people with disabilities for years and years. And So there was and similar things have been happening in prides all across the country and the world. I know there's an organization in DC called No Justice, No Pride that like has actually disrupted pride parades in DC because of their corporatism and because of their cozying with police. There's also the Dyke Marches, which were created as an alternative to Pride TM, and so there's a subset of the queer community that has actually achieved some privilege through marriage equality, and sometimes they forget about everyone else and forget about their history, um, and so we want to make sure that they don't.
Hell yeah. That's a beautiful way to end it, in my opinion. Is there anything? It's been beautiful having you on. Is there anything else that you want to say? Get out there, shout out.
And I have one more question. I'm not ready to end it.
Oh, my bad.
I was gonna say one thing that just you exude is empathy for all
Thank
different
you.
types of people. But I'm also curious because me naturally I'm not a very empathetic person. I'm not. I try to cultivate it, but that's just not my my core. Do you feel a weight or a heaviness that comes with your empathy from carrying other people's burdens?
I definitely try not to think about it as burdens. Definitely sometimes that weight happens if I'm doing like some mutual aid work and like not receiving not receiving like support in that, and feel like I'm like taking on a whole project for someone else entirely by myself. That weight can happen, but like really like it's about love. Like I'm not trying to care for anyone performatively. I'm just hoping that I can provide the care that my community needs. And like really that has to be shared. Everyone has to contribute to it in order for it not to feel like um as you say a burden. But I think that word in and of itself makes it harder than if we just think about it as what does my friend need right now.
Mm.
I like that. I like that a lot. And man, I was gonna say something and it totally left my brain. I don't know. Just I feel, even to like kind of touch on what we just spoke on, is what I was gonna say is I feel like people ignorance is bliss. You know, the more ignorant you are, probably the more happier you are. And people that fight the good fight, or people that are more awake, or more, let me say, more aware of what's going on, those are usually, like, I have a friend who is super smart, knows his history, knows everything, but it's like super depressed. And I'm like, bruh, it's because he knows so much.
Yeah.
Like, if I knew all that too, I'd be sad as well,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to turn the other cheek. Or turn the other eye. Like, it's so easy to not look at it. And we scroll through Instagram and you can see people dying, getting shot, just crazy stuff.
Exhausting.
And it's like, I feel like we see it so much that it's like we're desensitized to it, and
Definitely.
but people as yourself and other people that are, rather it's an activist, whatever it is, that like I feel like we need those people, because on the opposite end of the spectrum of ignorance is bliss, I read a quote. It's something like, people who stay neutral in a time of disaster have a special place in hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that's a truth too.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
thank you for doing what you do,
Yeah.
because we definitely need people like you.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you all for having me. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Most definitely.
Do you
And
mind
also-
if I close out with a Klezmer tune?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to hear some Klezmer live.
Hell yeah.
And also, before you get started, let people know how they can book you for gigs or teachings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can find me on my website, flightorvisibility.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at flightorvisibility. If you want to hear my music, I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Bandcamp. Flight or Visibility is 3 words. The only platform I'm not on is Amazon. So you should be able to find me anywhere else. And yeah, I'm doing live concerts in the Boston area, and I'm also doing virtual concerts anywhere. So
Nice.
so
Bobby, let these people know what to do, man.
Hope you motherfuckers stay black.
Don't be whack.